ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومهم من بعدهم من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مسلمون. والشمس تجري مسخر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأذن الكريم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون. وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون. سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون. ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فاستطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ومن يؤمره ننقصه في الخلق أفلا يأكلون. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون. وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. على أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات صواب الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وضل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل عصم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب ذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرة ولا لقبائه ساترة ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاده من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفزهني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمره. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاءك وألزمني حكمك وبلاغك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في ساعتي من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وصالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك مؤذب بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق الاعتراف ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحة وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارها سعت الأوطان تعبدك طاعية وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لي الأمور إليك أشكو ولم منها ضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأذجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج اللاملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولو نادينك إن كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاق تعمى عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أتباكها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيجا مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهركه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانهم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أتباكها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعظيم جاحدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كانت لأحد فيها مكرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرمة أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته كل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسماعك أن تجعل أوقات من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدة وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشتد على العزيمة جوانه وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعاطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجة وقلبي بحبك متيمة ومن علي بحسن إجابتك واكل أثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة وإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي وبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A central theme in the life of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was the theme of imamah. The idea that even if people do not recognize you as the imam, do not recognize you as the authority, what matters is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes as the authority. For years, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa would be in Mecca preaching the word of Allah. He did not stop being a prophet when people did not recognize him. And he did not start to be a prophet when he was in Medina, when people began to recognize him. He was always a prophet of Allah. Likewise, Imam Ali alayhi salam was always the Imam. When Rasulullah passed away and the fitnah occurred, and the right of Imam Ali alayhi salam to be the Khalifa in this world, the political leader in this world, when that right was usurped, it didn't mean that he stops being the God-chosen authority on earth. It doesn't mean he stops being the Imam. He remains the Imam whether people recognize it or not. If people choose to follow someone else politically or in government, if there is an election amongst the people, that's something else, even though that was supposed to be combined with the spiritual authority. The political authority was supposed to be combined as Rasulullah intended. But if the people did not do that, it doesn't make him not an Imam. And Sayyida Zahra alayhi salam, before she left this world, she did everything in her power to ensure people understood that the right of Imam Ali alayhi salam was not about khilafah or a position. It was about the divine authority of God, and that was his right, and it was not to be anyone else's. It's not that something was taken away from him that was dunyawi. It's that this is a divinely ordained decree. So when people say, why are you still discussing a political issue that occurred 1,400 years ago? We say, no, this is central to the religion itself. If this is a divinely ordained decree, then it's central to the deen, to the religion. I start with this thought and this idea and this theme because in the previous series, we spoke about the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And as the Imam's life came to an end, he was going to pass this authority on to the person who would hold the baton after him, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. The life of Imam Ali was a difficult life as he stood by this theme. When he left the public sphere for 25 years after Rasulullah had passed away and after his beloved Zahra alayhi salam had passed away, after he had buried her in the night time and she was oppressed, after her home was attacked. After all these years, 25 years, he is patient. And he lives through the time of the first three Khalifas. And when the time came for the third Khalifa to be killed, and the fitna overspilt onto Imam Ali alayhi salam, and the people crowded around him and finally wanted to elect him and appoint him as the political leader of the time, which didn't even mean they necessarily recognized his spiritual authority, by the way. But now they wanted him to be the fourth Khalifa, and he became the Khalifa. And then he was met with battle after battle. And not only any battle, but who was he battling? In the first battle, the battle of the camel, when he went up against the wife of the Prophet Aisha and his previous close friend and companion, Zubair. When Imam Ali alayhi salam had to fight against these people, Muslims versus Muslims, because they were trying to revolt against him. When afterwards he had to fight against Muawiyah in Siffin, and Muawiyah had spies surrounding Imam Ali alayhi salam from his own camps that were willing to give him up, that later on became the Khawarij, that then had a battle with Imam Ali in Nahrawan. Battle after battle after battle in those 4.5 to 5 years. 3 major battles, aside from the skirmishes, 3 major battles, and the people of Kufa began to take their steps back from Imam Ali. He had made Kufa his central base. Eventually, he was alone. He had lost so many of his close companions. Malik al-Ashtar, Ammar ibn Yasir, Salman al-Muhammadi. One by one, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. One by one, he was losing all of his companions. He got to a place where he told the people, that he was willing to go and fight Muawiyah alone because they would no longer heed his call. Because now people were saying Ali ibn Abi Talib does not know about war. And he spoke to them and he said to the people, you have filled my chest with so much pain and so much frustration. I wish I had never met you. But what opinion is there for one who is not obeyed? Because they would not follow his opinion. So he felt like he had none. Imam Ali alayhi salam showed us a true example of an Islamic government ran by a just leader. He was an archetypal king, Amirul Mu'mineen, and he succeeded in his mission. Hundreds and thousands of people loved him, and hundreds and thousands of people hated him. His legacy continued even 100 years after his death, and even though he was buried in secret, his legacy continued. All the events that would transpire would be based upon the love and hate of Ali ibn Abi Talib, from the Battle of Karbala to the movement of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, to the movement of even Zayd ibn Ali, to all the different revolts and uprisings and intifadat that would occur, to the fear-mongering amongst the enemies and those who hated him, from Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and Ziyad ibn Abi and Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. So much fear-mongering, so many revolutions, all of this is what transpired from the movement of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So much so that after his death, 100 years later, Kufa became the central of Tashayyu' in the world. Kufa and Greater Iraq, because Imam Ali had made this his center, people began to follow his path even after his death. That even in the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, you would find narrators and reporters who would say, I went into Kufa and I found 900 sheikhs, each one saying, Haddathani Ja'far ibn Muhammad. They would say that Ja'far, the son of Muhammad, has told me. That means Ja'far al-Sadiq, the 6th Imam, the son of Muhammad, the 5th Imam, Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. So people were now following Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. People who were not living in the time of Imam Ali were now becoming Shia. And movement towards Tashayyu' was growing. Until this movement, till now, 1,000 years later, Najaf is still a central dome of knowledge. For 1,000 years it continued that way as a light upon the world. Najaf was part of Kufa in those times. So Najaf, a bit further away from Kufa. So Najaf is part of this Nur, where Imam Ali alayhi salam is buried, and Kufa is the place in which Imam Ali alayhi salam had made his central base and had become the center of Tashayyu'. This is an important point for this series, this year's series, concerning the life of Imam Hassan alayhi salam and the Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Because Kufa had a central role to play in the Khilafah and the uprisings and the actions of both of these Imams. The hearts of these two Imams sank on that night, the 19th of Ramadan, when Ibn Muljam struck his sword onto the head of Imam Ali alayhi salam when he was in sujood. The cries of the people were loud, and the blood of the Imam had spilt inside the masjid. Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein carried their father to his home and sat by his side for the next 2 to 3 days as his soul was going to leave this world. People gathered around the house of Imam Ali alayhi salam as the Imam gave his final wasiyah to his sons. And when he told the family to give their bay'ah to Imam al-Hassan, he brought Imam al-Hassan close to him and told him, my son, Rasulullah had ordered me many years ago that when the time had come for me to leave this world, to give you my book and my sword the way he gave me his book and his sword. And to tell you, Ya Hassan, this is an order from Rasulullah, that when your soul leaves this world, when death comes for you, you are to give your book and your sword to your brother Hussein. This is my wasiyah, and you are the Imam after me. Then the Imam saw visions of Rasulullah and Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam waiting for him. And he went and moved into the final abode and left this world. The heaviness of the duties of the world were now held by Imam al-Hassan. He was to carry this burden. Imam al-Hussein was to stand by his side. They emerged from the house and the people would cry. And then Imam al-Hassan walked to the masjid of Kufa. And the people followed. Imam al-Hassan stopped in the masjid. This is right after Imam Ali passes away. Imam al-Hassan, in his strength and courage, is able to give a speech in this moment. Then he says to the people, "O people," as the Muhajirun and Ansar, those who are left, are gathered around him. He said, "Today a soul leaves us that no one will ever understand. Today the brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi leaves this world. The man who stood by the Prophet and fought with him side by side for so many years. The one who preferred Rasulullah more than his own self. The one who on his right would be Jibreel and on his left would be Mikael, wherever the Prophet would send him, and he would never return in failure." And people would cry as he would remember his father Imam Ali and speak about the fada'il of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and speak about the stories and the oppression and the loneliness that Imam Ali felt in the last years of his life. And then Imam al-Hassan began to tell the people of what was to happen next. And each Imam used this technique. He would remind them first of who he is in lineage to the grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. He said, "O people, those who know me, and if you don't know me, فَأَنَا الْحَسَنِ ibn Ali, وَأَنَا ibn al-Nabiy al-Wasi." And I am the son of Ali and the son of the Prophet. And I am the son of whom Jibreel would come and visit. And I am the son of whom told the Muslims that they must love his family. He reminds the people to show them his station before they give their bay'ah. This is a wasiyah of the Prophet. A wasiyah of the Prophet, a will of the Prophet is a will of Allah. Because the Prophet does not speak from his own accord. So this is God's authority speaking and telling the people and reminding them until Ibn Abbas gets up and says, "O people, this is now your Imam. From your previous Imam and from the Prophet, you must come and give the bay'ah." As Rasulullah had said, that these two boys, about Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, imaman, qama aw qa'ada. Whether they sit, whether they stand, these two are imams. Then the people came up and began to give their bay'ah to Imam al-Hassan as the next stage in the history of Islam unfolded. Now, it was not a coincidence that Imam al-Hassan began the movement towards his khilafah with the dhikr of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when he would say, "I am his son," he's only repeating what the Prophet would constantly say. Hassan is my son. Hussein is my son. Abna'i, he would call them his abna'. He would call them only his sons. Never anything else. Not the sons of my daughter, not my grandchildren. Constantly my sons. Some people might think that this is normal. Not necessarily. When Imam al-Hassan was born, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam handed him over to his father. And she said, "Name him." And Imam Ali alayhi salam said, "I will not name him without the Prophet." And when the Prophet came, he took Imam al-Hassan into his arms. And before he named him, he said, "I wish to speak to Jibreel before I name him." So Jibreel came and spoke to Rasulullah. And Jibreel told Rasulullah, since Ali is to you the way that Harun was to Musa, why don't you name him the name of Harun's son? And so the Prophet Muhammad said, what was Harun's son's name? And Jibreel told him, Shubbar. So the Prophet replied, Lisani Arabi. My tongue is an Arabian tongue, and Shubbar is not an Arabian name. So Jibreel told him what Shubbar would be in Arabic. And he told him Al-Hasan. So Shubbar and Shubayr were the sons of Harun. And in Arabic, those become Hassan wa Hussein. So the Prophet, when he took Imam al-Hasan from the arms of Imam Ali, what he said was, Hatibni, give me my son. Nothing else. He would constantly call them his sons. Nowadays, this is seen as something very normal. If you say to my son, my son. But in those days, definitely, when it came to the sons of the daughter, they were not seen as your sons. The custom in those days was not the case. In fact, people mocked the Prophet for so very long because he did not have an adult son. He only had one daughter. So they would make fun of him and they would say his legacy would not carry on, because the continuation of legacy and lineage was always understood to be through the male. It was always, my son's sons are mine, my son's son's sons are mine, but never my daughter's sons. And even in some cases, my son's sons don't necessarily mean that they're my sons, they're my grandchildren. When it came to the sons of the daughter, this was not the custom. This was not the case. And so this was one of the teachings of Rasulullah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the superficial idea amongst the people through the life and actions of the Prophet. That Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam, being his only surviving child, she would continue the legacy of the Prophet. The most prestigious legacy on earth would be only continued through a woman, not through the male, but through the female. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the life and teachings of the Prophet, corrected this. It was not a custom amongst the people for them to say that this is their son. And what the Prophet was pointing towards before anything else was not that they were blood relatives of his. It was a spiritual connection above blood that he was pointing to. He was showing that these two are the heirs in spirituality and teachings. Imaman, qama aw qa'ada, two imams standing or sitting. He would say, Hasan, ashbahani bi khuluqi wa akhlaqi. He is similar to me in my behavior, in my ethics, in the way that I am, in the way that I move. Hasan is just like me. Rasulullah would constantly tell people about Imam al-Hasan, not only from a position of love, but from a position of authority. So when he would say, Amruhu amri wa qawluhu qawli, his order is my order, his will is my will. And what he says, I say. Man tabi'ahu minni, wa man asah laysa minni. He who follows him is from me, and he who does not follow him is not from me. This is not about love. It's not about a blood connection. This is about authority, religious authority, spiritual authority, even political authority. He was paving the way for his sons as the heirs to his teachings. This was not to do with the custom of being a grandfather, especially in those days. So, two main points that we learn from this, in summary, from this action of Rasulullah when he would emphasize the importance of his sons, was that the legacy is not superficial. This idea of lineage was corrected by the Prophet being deprived of having an adult son, so that Fatima alayhi salam was to be the woman who brought forth all the descendants of the Prophet. So this was corrected through the life and teachings of the Prophet. And the second teaching, and it is the important teaching, is that these two, Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein, they are central to the message of Islam as the heirs to the Prophet. That the same way Rasulullah is central to the message of Islam, so are they. They are from him. That you need a spiritual connection. You need to understand and connect to these two if you want to understand Islam from its root, because the Prophet is telling you to. So Rasulullah emphasized this not only as his sons, his blood relatives, but as the heirs to the teachings of Islam, as the authorities. So Rasulullah made this clear and evident by telling us that these two are his sons. And Imam al-Hasan and every Imam afterwards constantly told the people, I am the son of the one. And then they would continue to attribute all the different attributes of Rasulullah and the famous stories of his, so people would remember that they are central to the message, as was their grandfather. Now, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam became the Khalifa at a very critical time when the Muslim Ummah was in absolute turmoil. Muawiyah was vying for the Khilafah and he was eventually going to get it. Imam al-Hasan was one of the most oppressed Imams, if not the most oppressed. Not only by his enemies, but also by his followers. Because the way in which Muawiyah acted, and he had this huge propaganda machine backing him, was that he was someone who always had an inferiority complex. He was one of the tulaqa. He was someone who was fighting against Islam in the early days with his father Abu Sufyan, who Rasulullah had imprisoned and then released when he entered Mecca. The people that Rasulullah imprisoned and then released were known as the tulaqa. So they were always shamed by that. So Muawiyah always had that image as one of the tulaqa. He always had to get rid of that. He wasn't like Imam Ali alayhi salam, the one who married the daughter of the Prophet or fought side by side from the beginning, or even Al-Hasan or Al-Hussein, these two Sayyiday Shab Ahl al-Jannah, the youths of paradise. Muawiyah had this inferiority complex and could not change the past. So he wanted to impact the future. And with his propaganda machine and all of his money, he had gathered all these scholars, and there was a campaign of writing fake hadith and fake teachings about Imam al-Hasan. And this continued even into the Abbasid era. The one time the historians of Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas agreed with each other was when they would write about Imam al-Hasan. And they tried to assassinate his character. So this project of the character assassination of Imam al-Hasan went forward. And the Orientalists had taken these early sources, and when they write about Imam al-Hasan now, they write about him in a way that makes his personality seem weak or confused, or that they said he was extravagant, that he loved his stomach, that he gave away the Khilafah for money, or that he would constantly marry and divorce women, that he was a womanizer, and that he married 300 or 200 women. They wanted to make it seem like even though Muawiyah was one of the tulaqa, he was a man of the government and he was a leader. Whereas Hassan, he's not a man of the government and he's not a leader. So they had written this about him and continued. And sometimes some of the followers of the Imam get confused. So I just want to focus on the idea of the wives of Imam al-Hasan, just so you get an example of how one can pick these arguments apart quite easily if they know their sources. So when it comes to the wives of Imam al-Hasan, there are 4 narrations that speak about the number of wives. One says he married 70 wives. One says he married 90 wives and then divorced them. One says he married 200 wives. And one says he married 300 wives. Imagine. So much that Imam Ali alayhi salam stood in front of the people on the minbar and said, "Oh people, my son Al-Hasan, this is my son Al-Hasan, do not marry your daughters to him." And someone speaks up and says, "How come we cannot marry our daughters to Al-Hasan when he is the son of the Prophet?" And Imam Ali alayhi salam tells them, "Don't marry your daughters to him." He publicly humiliates Imam al-Hasan in this, of course, fake narration. So I'm going to speak about 4 reasons why narrations like this are not true or authentic or reliable. And the same goes for all the other rumors and everything else that they spread, the misinformation that was spread to assassinate the character of Imam al-Mujtaba. So the first reason is because they're just not authentic. When you look at the narrations, the narration that was telling us about 70 wives was narrated by a man named Ali ibn Abdullah al-Misri. This man, according to the scholars of Rijal, who would tell us of the biographies of those who would narrate the hadiths to us, is someone who is unreliable, that we should not take from him. So when he is in the chain of the hadith that tells us that Imam al-Hasan married 70 women, this is an unreliable chain. Let alone the chain that is for the hadith of 90 wives, there is no chain. It's what the scholars of Rijal call mursala. It means that we don't know where it came from, that it's not sourced. So the hadith with 70 wives was sourced, but the person was unreliable. The hadith of 90 wives is not even sourced, let alone the hadith which tells us of the 250 or 300 wives. Those two hadiths, they were narrated by someone called Abu Talib al-Maliki. And Alam al-Majlisi had narrated from him. Now, this person, it's known that he was suffering from hysteria. There are several different outrageous claims in his writings and books that make it very strange for us to rely on such a person who would allow, for example, parties and music and all that sort of thing. The second reason as to why these hadiths seem strange to us is because, well, would Imam Ali alayhi salam ever actually do that? Where he would stand on the minbar and humiliate his son in front of everyone? I wouldn't do that to my own child. I don't know anyone who would. How would Imam Ali do that? And not about any child, but about Imam al-Hasan, who Rasulullah had spoken about and said that he resembles me in my behavior and my ethics. The most we could say is, if it did happen, of course we would believe, rather than Imam Ali humiliating him in public, he would take him to the side and advise him and talk to him. But even that seems unlikely considering the circumstances. But how could Imam Ali alayhi salam jump up in front of everyone and humiliate his son? It just doesn't fit the narrative of who they are and what they stand for and their teachings. Thirdly, and also along these lines, a third reason is that we know divorce is one of the most hated acts by Allah. Would Imam al-Hasan, the son of the Prophet and the God-appointed authority on earth, would he continuously do that which Allah dislikes up to 200 or 300 times? And fourthly, if there are this many women, who are they? Where are they? What are their names? In the reports, we only find 9 names. Well, the lowest amount in the narrations is 70. Where are the rest of them? When we look at who his children are, we find only 15 recorded children, which was a very normal amount of children in those days for someone with 1 or 2 wives. Even 1 wife would sometimes give you 15 children. So 2 wives, 15 children. 15 children from 70 wives, 90 wives, 250 or 300 wives. Where are they? Why aren't they recorded? So when you just go into the history a little bit and you look into the sources, you realize that this is fake, this is fake, this is fake, and this was all part of the plan in order to assassinate the character of Imam al-Hasan. And so many people fell for it, especially the Orientalists that would write about the history of Islam afterwards, and they would use these sources written by Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas. And unfortunately, some of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt would then read that and fall for the trick that was made over 1,000 years ago. Another issue that comes up is the discrepancy and apparent inconsistency between Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and their personalities. And this is important when it comes to discussing the treaty that Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam agreed upon with Muawiyah. Because what some people claim is that since Imam al-Hasan accepted the treaty with Muawiyah, why don't you? And they would use the fake narrations of obeying the leader and the Khalifa, even if he is an oppressor. That you must pray behind him, even if he is an oppressor. Even if this person stands against the principles of Islam, because he is the Khalifa, we must stand with him. This fake narration, they try to apply that on Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. And they say that there is no consistency between these three personalities. That Imam Ali alayhi salam, he was uncompromising. He was very stern. He was idealistic. He would go to battle and thousands would die because he would be very principled. He would always stick by his principle. Whether right or wrong, he would stick by it. To make a point, he would go to battle. Whereas Imam al-Hasan, he was actually much more lax than his father. Where his father was someone who was very humble, Imam al-Hasan was someone who was very extravagant. When his father was someone who was uncompromising and idealistic, Imam al-Hasan was very compromising and pragmatic. And Imam al-Hasan did not like to do battle. He liked to stay out of trouble. And this is very different to his brother Imam al-Hussein, who was much like his father. He went back to the idealistic way, and he was a lover of martyrdom and battle. And he went to Karbala to make a point and stand by a principle like his father would have. Whereas Imam al-Hasan in the middle was not that way. So they claim there is no consistency between these three personalities. And they even bring forth a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam where he says, my son Hussein and I are similar, but Hassan has his own way. So is this true? The followers of Ahlul Bayt, we claim that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi brought forth a message and one light, and the Ahlul Bayt represent this one light unified. That if you look at every Imam in every situation, they would all have shared the same opinion, since they are all one Nur. So what is the answer? Do we believe that this is all one Nur, one light, one message between all the Imams, starting from the Prophet and all the Ahlul Bayt, that they would not disagree on an opinion, that there is consistency in their actions? Or is it the other idea, that there is an inconsistency in their actions, and that we're just trying to change history to make it seem that our theological beliefs are true? Which is it? So what we have to do is look at the facts. We look at facts, and from there we can analyze and find an answer to see were they consistent or were they not consistent. And there are two main points that I wish to focus on here that aids us in our conclusion. The first point and the first objection that we raise to those who claim inconsistency is that we all agree that Imam Ali alayhi salam was a very principled man. No one doubts this. Imam Ali alayhi salam, as mentioned, would go to war based on principle. He would never diverge from his principle. And we also all agree that Imam Ali alayhi salam considered Imam al-Hasan to be his rightful heir. That's not a point of contention. The point of contention is about the consistency between personalities. What I'm saying here is, if Imam Ali is this very principled and idealistic and non-compromising individual that you're saying he is, and he considered Imam al-Hasan as his rightful heir, how could he consider someone that would diverge so much from his principles as his rightful heir, if he was to be so principled? Amongst the Ahlul Bayt, no one objected to the idea of Imam al-Hasan being the heir. Not even a sniff of an objection, especially from the other so-called uncompromising and idealistic individual, Imam al-Hussein. He never came once and said, I am more similar to my father, let me be the Khalifa. It's not for Hassan. Not once. Never once did he object to Imam al-Hasan. When Imam al-Hasan made the treaty with Muawiyah, that would be the time of objection. Imam al-Hussein stayed with him. When Imam al-Hasan left Kufa, did Imam Hussein say, I'm staying in Kufa? if Imam al-Hussein is this non-compromising individual and a person so firm upon his beliefs like his father was, willing to go to war, then he would have stayed in Kufa. He would have fought against Muawiyah. He wouldn't have gone with Imam al-Hasan. But he went with Imam al-Hasan to Medina. Not once did he disagree with him. He followed him as his Imam. All of the Ahlul Bayt, not once did they disagree with Imam al-Hasan. They followed him as their Imam. So that is the first point, an objection we wish to raise. The second point, an objection, is that Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam considered Imam al-Hussein to be his heir, to be the Imam after him. It was very clear that Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam considered Imam al-Hussein to be the heir. Even though there were quietists around him, like his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah or Abdullah ibn Abbas, Imam al-Hasan very clearly had Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam as the one who would lead after him, as did the entire Ahlul Bayt. And this points to a truth in how the Ahlul Bayt viewed Imamah. So I come to the first point I made in this lecture. We see how the Imamah was passed down from first Imam to second Imam to third Imam and so on very clearly. There are no concocted hadiths and there is no confusion when we analyze and see how the Imams passed down the leadership. This is a hujjah against those who claim that Imam Ali alayhi salam was perhaps pleased or not pleased with the first Khalifa, or all the different hadiths that were concocted and the fake hadiths that were made and written surrounding the death of the Prophet and what Ali ibn Abi Talib actually believed. If you want to see what Ali ibn Abi Talib actually believed, you see how he considered Imamah and leadership on his deathbed. He called everyone and said, my son al-Hasan is my wasi and the Imam after me, and obey him very clearly. Not one person can object to this fact. Not a Sunni or anyone else or any historian. Likewise, Imam al-Hasan very clearly told everyone on his deathbed, Hussein is the heir and wasi and Imam after me. We see that by analyzing this point, the idea of Imamah and leadership, the consistency is there. It is unanimous amongst the Imams and there is no divergence. And from here, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam becomes the greatest hujjah for those who say that Imam Ali alayhi salam left the leadership to the will of the Muslim Ummah. If that was the case, then he wouldn't have given it to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam on his deathbed. Imam Ali alayhi salam didn't say, choose whoever you want. He said, Hassan is the leader after me, and it's down to everyone to either obey or disobey. That was the idea of Imamah amongst the Ahlul Bayt, whether people recognized it or not. And so the Imams were consistent in their ideology, in their actions, and their thought process, unanimous in what they do. And this light that Rasulullah had brought in was carried on through them, so that the words of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam carry on for eternity when he said, أولنا Muhammad wa akhiruna Muhammad wa kulluna Muhammad. The first of us is Muhammad, the last of us is Muhammad, and we are all Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
زيارة الإمام حسين عليه السلام بالجمعة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاري والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. ولعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من ملهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والهجة والأحل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسوله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي. وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباء. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله ووداء. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصر. السلام عليكم يا أنصار عمي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وتابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله. أشهد إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. فنعم أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استهلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المهام الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. والحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم السلام عليكم يا ساداتي وموالي جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي غريب الغرباء السلطان أبا الحسن مولانا لابن موسى الرزا، كن شفينا وشفي والدي في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر والزهور الأمن ورحمة الله وبركاته.